Block 1. The first time I touched his wounds, the forest went silent. 200 pairs of eyes watched from the shadows, waiting for me to fail, for my hands to tremble, for my courage to break. I was nothing to them, just the weak Omega who couldn't shift properly, couldn't hunt, couldn't even howl with the proper timbre that made the mountain echo. Yet here I stood, the only one who could save their dying Alpha King. Autumn had descended upon our territory with unusual cruelty that year. The maples bled crimson against the darkening sky, and the air carried the scent of wood smoke and decay. Our pack had gathered for the Harvest Moon celebration, an ancient ritual where status and strength were reaffirmed, where pecking orders were established for another season. As always, I lingered at the edges, invisible by design. My pale blonde hair, so unlike the dark tresses of most pack members, made me stand out even as I tried to disappear. "Stay hidden. Stay safe," my grandmother had whispered to me years ago, pressing her silver pendant into my palm before she died. The worn metal wolf, howling at an invisible moon, hung around my neck now, a constant reminder that sometimes survival meant being overlooked. "Your power comes from a different place, Eleanor," she'd told me. "Not from teeth or claws." I clutched the pendant now, watching as the Alpha King, Dominic Ravenwolf, stood powerful and magnificent before the pack. His massive frame silhouetted against the bonfire made even the strongest betas shrink back. Everyone knew his reputation: ruthless in battle, undefeated in challenges, merciless to enemies. The Northern Territories had known peace for 3 years, solely because other packs feared him too much to attack. That's when I noticed it. A slight hesitation in his movement, a barely perceptible favoritism of his left side. Something was wrong. My Omega senses, attuned to pain and suffering in ways the others couldn't understand, picked up on it immediately. But before I could process what I was seeing, a howl tore through the night. Not one of celebration, but of warning. The attack came from nowhere. A rival pack, thinking they'd found weakness in our Alpha King, poured from the tree line like shadows given form. And in that chaos, I saw what no one else did. Dominic had been wounded before the attack even began. Someone had poisoned him. Screams and growls filled the air as I pressed myself against an ancient oak, trying to become one with its bark. This wasn't my fight. I wasn't built for this. But as the battle raged, I watched in horror as Dominic staggered, his movements growing sluggish. His wounds weren't healing, not as they should for an alpha. Whatever poison coursed through his veins was supernatural in origin. The smell of blood, sharp and metallic, mixed with the earthy scents of the forest. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I watched our warriors fall. This wasn't just an attack, it was a slaughter, and our king was failing before my eyes. I don't know what possessed me. Perhaps it was my grandmother speaking through memories, or perhaps it was the Omega in me, unable to watch suffering without acting, but I found myself moving toward him, not away. Slipping between shadows, avoiding clashing bodies, I made my way to where Dominic had fallen against a boulder, his breathing labored, his eyes glassy with fever. "What are you doing here, little Omega?" he growled, his voice still commanding even as death crept through his veins. This close, I could see the wounds clearly. 3 deep gashes across his torso that gleamed with an unnatural blue tinge, wolfsbane mixed with something else. Something ancient. "I can help you," I whispered, my voice nearly lost in the sounds of battle. His laugh was bitter, like crushed berries in winter. "No one can help me now." "I can," I insisted, calling upon knowledge passed down through generations of Omega healers in my bloodline. Knowledge I'd hidden, just as I'd hidden everything else about myself. "But you have to trust me." His eyes, the color of storm clouds, fixed on mine. I expected disgust or dismissal. Instead, I saw resignation. "What's your name?" he asked, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "Eleanor," I answered, my hands already reaching for the herbs I kept in the small pouch at my waist, always prepared, always hidden. "Eleanor Moonfell." "Well, Eleanor Moonfell," he said, his voice growing weaker. "If I'm going to die today, at least it will be looking at something beautiful." I felt heat rise to my cheeks despite the gravity of the situation. No one had ever called me beautiful before. Pretty, perhaps, in a forgettable way. Unusual, with my pale hair and too sensitive nature. But never beautiful, and certainly not by someone like him. The fighting had moved deeper into the forest, leaving us in a pocket of eerie calm. I worked quickly, crushing herbs between my fingers, mixing them with spring water from my flask. The recipe was ancient, wolfsbane antidote enhanced with moonflower essence and my own blood. Just 3 drops. Omega blood contained healing properties that no other rank possessed, though few knew this secret. It was another thing that made us valuable yet vulnerable. This will hurt, I warned him as I prepared to clean the wounds. His smile was tight with pain. Everything about being alive hurts, little healer. There was truth in his words that echoed my own experience, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. As I pressed the mixture into his wounds, his body went rigid, a roar of pain tearing from his throat. I placed my hand over his mouth, my eyes wide with panic. Shh, you'll bring them back. His eyes flashed red with alpha fury at being silenced, but he understood. Beneath my palm, his lips pressed together, containing the agony I knew was coursing through him. Time stretched and compressed as I worked. Minutes felt like hours as I cleaned each wound, applied the poultice, and bound them with strips torn from my own dress. All the while, I whispered the healing incantations my grandmother had taught me in secret, words in an ancient language that predated pack laws and hierarchies. As I worked, I felt something unexpected, a connection forming between us. Each touch of my hands to his skin sent awareness skittering through me. This wasn't just any wolf. This was the Alpha King. His power, even diminished by poison, radiated like heat from a forge. And something in me, something I'd spent a lifetime suppressing, responded to it. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, his voice stronger now as the antidote began to work. "You're sent. You're unmated, unclaimed. I've never noticed you before." "That's the point," I said softly, not meeting his gaze as I finished the bandaging. "Not being noticed is how I've survived." His hand, so much larger than mine, suddenly captured my wrist. The touch sent a jolt through me that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with a recognition I wasn't prepared to acknowledge. "Look at me," he commanded, and my eyes obeyed before my mind could resist. The alpha compulsion in his voice was impossible to deny. What I saw in his gaze stole my breath. Not just the fading glassiness of poison, but something awakening. Something seeing me, truly seeing me, for the first time. "What else have you been hiding, Eleanor Moonfell?" he asked, his thumb brushing over my pulse point. Before I could answer, a howl cut through the night. Victory and rage mingled into one sound. The battle was ending, and from the triumphant notes, our side had prevailed. Relief flooded me, making my hands tremble where they rested against his chest. "Your pack needs you," I whispered, trying to pull away. "The poison isn't completely neutralized, but you'll live. You should be able to stand now." His grip tightened. "Our pack," he corrected. And this conversation isn't finished. Fear and something warmer fluttered in my chest. I'd spent my life in shadows, unnoticed and untouched. The thought of being seen, truly seen, by the Alpha King, terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. "Please," I said, "let me go. No one can know what I did, what I am." Confusion furrowed his brow. "You saved your Alpha. There is honor in that." I shook my head, desperation making my voice crack. "There's no honor for an Omega who steps above her place. You know the laws as well as I do." For a moment, he looked like he might argue, but the sounds of approaching packmates made him release me. I scrambled backward, prepared to disappear into the forest as I'd always done. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice pitched low so only I could hear. "Come to me at the Alpha House at dawn." "That's an order, little healer." Then his beta, Gabriel, burst into the clearing with 3 warriors. Their eyes widened at the sight of their Alpha wounded but alive, struggling to his feet with newfound strength. "Dominic, we thought—" Gabriel began, relief evident in his voice. "It would take more than cowards with poisoned blades to end me," Dominic growled, his authority returning with each word. If he felt pain from his wounds, he didn't show it now. "What of the attackers?" 15 dead, The rest scattered back to their territory, Gabriel reported, his gaze sliding over me briefly before dismissing me as unimportant. Just another Omega, insignificant in the aftermath of battle. As they helped their king back toward the pack grounds, Dominic looked over his shoulder once, his eyes finding mine where I stood half hidden by shadows. Something passed between us, a promise or a threat, I couldn't be sure. All I knew was that by saving him, I had exposed myself in ways I never intended. Tomorrow would come with its own dangers, but for tonight, our pack was safe. The Alpha King lived because of me, though none but he would ever know it. As I slipped away into the darkness, my grandmother's pendant warm against my skin, I wondered if I had saved our pack, or merely postponed a different kind of danger, one that threatened not my life, but the careful isolation I had built around my heart. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned in my small cabin at the edges of pack territory, my mind replaying the moment my hands had touched the Alpha King's skin. The connection I'd felt, immediate and overwhelming, wasn't something I'd been prepared for. Omegas weren't supposed to feel such things, especially not for alphas. We existed in different worlds, separated by power and purpose. Dawn approached with cruel swiftness. Pink fingers of light crept through my window as I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I should obey his command or run. Running had always been my first instinct, not from physical threats, but from attention. Attention brought expectations, and expectations brought disappointment. I was the Omega who couldn't shift properly, whose wolf form emerged small and vulnerable, more suitable for a house pet than a pack member. "This is madness," I whispered to the empty room as I finally rose and dressed in my simplest clothes, faded jeans and a soft blue sweater that matched my eyes, nothing that would draw attention, though I took extra care with my hair, braiding the pale blonde strands into a simple plait. Not for him, I told myself. For dignity. My grandmother's pendant hung heavy between my collarbones. I clutched it, drawing strength from its familiar contours. "What would you do?" I asked the memory of her. She had been an Omega too, but one who carried herself with quiet dignity. One who knew secrets about our kind that others had forgotten. The forest was silent as I made my way toward the pack heart, where the Alpha House stood imposing against the morning sky. Built from massive timber and stone, it had housed generations of pack leaders. I had never been inside. Omegas like me were rarely invited into such spaces of power, unless serving in some capacity. Dew dampened my boots as I walked, and the scent of pine and earth filled my lungs. The aftermath of battle still lingered in the air. Blood, fear, and triumph mingled into a potent reminder of what had happened. Bodies had been cleared away, but nature hadn't yet reclaimed the energy of violence that hung like mist between the trees. As I approached the Alpha House, my steps slowed. 2 guards flanked the entrance, their postures alert despite the early hour. I recognized them, Mason and Liam, both high-ranking betas who had always treated me with the casual disregard reserved for the lowest pack members. "What business do you have here, Omega?" Mason asked, his tone making the question sound like an accusation. I swallowed hard, hating how my voice trembled. The Alpha requested my presence. Their eyebrows rose in twin expressions of disbelief. Did he now? Liam's smirk suggested he thought I was lying. "And why would our king want to see you?" The door swung open before I could answer, revealing Gabriel, the beta second in command. His dark eyes assessed me with cold efficiency. "Let her pass," he said, his deep voice brooking no argument. "The Alpha is waiting." The guards stepped aside, though their curious gazes followed me as Gabriel led me into the house. The interior was surprisingly warm, with high ceilings and windows that captured the morning light. Wood and stone dominated the design, creating a space that felt both ancient and timeless. "He's in his study," Gabriel said, leading me down a corridor lined with paintings of previous pack leaders. All of them stared down with the same intensity I'd seen in Dominic's eyes, the weight of responsibility etched into their features. "I don't know what you did last night," Gabriel continued, his voice lowered. "But he wasn't expected to survive those wounds." I kept my eyes downcast. "I just helped clean them." Gabriel stopped abruptly, turning to face me. "Don't lie to me, Omega. I've been at his side for 15 years. I know poison when I see it, and I know what those wounds should have done to him." His gaze was penetrating, searching for truths I wasn't willing to give. Whatever you did, whatever you are, he seems to think you're valuable. That's the only reason you're walking these halls right now. The thread in his words was clear, but so was something else. A grudging respect that I'd never heard directed at me before. Before I could respond, we reached a heavy wooden door. Gabriel knocked once, then opened it without waiting for a response. "The Omega, as requested," he announced, then stepped back to allow me entry. The study was smaller than I expected, lined with books and dominated by a large desk made from a single slice of ancient oak. Behind it sat Dominic Ravenwolf, the Alpha King, looking considerably better than when I'd last seen him. The pallor was gone from his face, and his eyes were clear and sharp as they fixed on me. He wore a simple black t-shirt that did little to hide his powerful build, and I could see the edges of my makeshift bandages peeking from beneath the fabric. "Leave us," he commanded, not looking at Gabriel. The beta hesitated for just a moment, long enough to be noticeable, before inclining his head and backing out of the room. The door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded like a prison gate in my ears. Silence stretched between us, thick with unasked questions. I stood perfectly still, eyes lowered as was proper for an Omega in the presence of an Alpha, especially one of his stature. My heart thundered so loudly I was certain he could hear it. "Look at me, Eleanor Moonfell," he finally said, his voice softer than I expected. I raised my eyes slowly, fighting years of conditioning that told me to remain submissive. What I saw confused me. There was no anger in his expression, no disgust or dismissal. Instead, he looked curious, intrigued even. "You saved my life last night," he stated simply. "Anyone would have—" "No." He cut me off, rising from his chair with a fluid grace that belied his injuries. "Not anyone. I've been Alpha for 8 years, and I know every member of this pack. Every strength, every weakness, every skill." He moved around the desk, each step deliberate as he approached me. "Yet somehow I missed you." I took an instinctive step backward, my back pressing against a bookshelf. "I'm easy to miss." A smile touched his lips, transforming his severe features into something devastatingly handsome. "I'm beginning to think that was by design." He stopped just a foot away, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the wild, masculine scent of him, mixed with the herbs I'd used in my poultice. "The question is why an Omega with healing gifts would hide them when they could elevate her status." The truth lodged in my throat. How could I explain that elevation wasn't what I wanted, that safety had always meant invisibility to me? "My grandmother was a healer," I said instead, offering a piece of truth rather than the whole. "She taught me some things before she died." His eyes dropped to the pendant around my neck, then back to my face. "More than some things, I think. Those wounds should have killed me. The poison was ancient, bloodroot mixed with wolfsbane, and something else I couldn't identify. Not the work of rival wolves, but something more sinister." A chill ran through me. Bloodroot was deadly on its own, but combined with wolfsbane. "Someone wanted you dead. Someone with knowledge of the old ways." He nodded, watching me closely. "Which makes your knowledge of the counteragent all the more interesting. That's not common pack lore, Eleanor." I wet my lips nervously, aware of how his eyes tracked the movement. "My grandmother believed in preserving old knowledge. Even the dangerous kinds. Smart woman," he murmured. "I would have liked to meet her." "She died when I was 16, I said, the grief still fresh even after 8 years. "Hunters caught her alone in the forest." His expression darkened. "I remember. That was just before I became Alpha. The previous leadership did nothing about it." "She was just an Omega," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Expendable." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Is that what you think? That Omegas are expendable?" "It's what I've been taught my entire life," I answered honestly. He moved closer still, until barely inches separated us. I should have been terrified. He was the Alpha King, capable of killing with a single blow. But fear wasn't what made my pulse race. "Then you've been taught wrong," he said, his voice a low rumble that I felt more than heard. "A true pack values every member, from the strongest alpha to the gentlest omega. We've lost that understanding over generations of poor leadership, including, perhaps, my own. His admission startled me. Alphas didn't admit weakness, especially not to omegas. The wounds, I said, changing the subject abruptly. I should check them. The treatment isn't complete. Something like amusement flickered across his features. Always the healer. Very well. Without warning, he grasped the hem of his shirt and pulled it over his head in one smooth motion. My breath caught. Despite his injuries, his body was magnificent. Broad shoulders tapering to a narrow waist, every inch covered in muscle honed by years of fighting and running. The bandages I'd applied stood stark white against his tanned skin, a faint stain of blue-black visible through the fabric. The poison is still working its way out, I said, professional instincts taking over as I stepped forward to examine the bandages. May I? He nodded, standing perfectly still as I carefully peeled back the dressing. The wounds looked better than I'd expected. The unnatural blue tinge had faded, leaving normal-looking cuts that were already beginning to heal. Alpha regeneration was finally asserting itself over the poison. You'll live, I said, trying to keep my tone clinical despite our proximity. But you need one more application of the poultice to draw out the remaining toxin. I reached for my bag, where I'd packed fresh herbs just in case. His hand caught mine, the touch sending sparks of awareness up my arm. Why didn't you run? He asked quietly. After last night, you could have disappeared. Other packs would value a healer with your skills. The question hit close to the thoughts that had kept me awake. This is my home, I said simply. For better or worse, even though you live on the fringes, even though you've been undervalued. I met his gaze steadily. Even then, something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps. He released my hand, allowing me to prepare the fresh poultice. As I worked, mixing herbs with water and the smallest drop of my blood, hidden by my turned back, I felt his eyes on me. There's more to you than meets the eye, Eleanor Moonfell, he said. Much more. I didn't respond, focusing on my task. When I turned back to him, poultice ready, I found him watching me with an intensity that made me flush. This might sting, I warned, approaching him again. I can handle pain, he said, a hint of wry humor in his voice. As I applied the mixture to his wounds, my fingers brushing against his warm skin, I was acutely aware of our positions. The Alpha King allowing an Omega to touch him, to heal him. It was unprecedented, intimate in ways that went beyond the physical. You never answered my question, he said as I worked. Why hide your gifts? My hands stilled for a moment before continuing their careful work. Gifts bring attention. Attention isn't always safe for Omegas, especially those without protection. Without protection, he repeated, his voice hardening. You mean without an Alpha? I nodded, not trusting my voice. And no one has claimed you, in all these years. The question stung more than I wanted to admit. I'm not exactly prize material, I said, forcing lightness into my tone. Can't shift properly. Too quiet. Too different. His hand suddenly captured my chin, tilting my face up to his. The touch was gentle but commanding, allowing no escape from his scrutiny. Different isn't a flaw, little healer. It's what saved my life. What might save us all. Confusion furrowed my brow. What do you mean? Before he could answer, the door burst open. Gabriel stood there, his expression grim. We have a situation, he said, his eyes darting between Dominic's bare chest and my hands upon it. If he found the scene surprising, he didn't show it. Scouts report movement at the borders, all of them, north, south, east, and west. Dominic straightened, instantly alert. How many? At least 200 wolves, Gabriel said, his voice tight with tension. They've surrounded the entire territory. They're not attacking, just waiting. My blood turned to ice. 200 wolves. It was an invasion force. Our pack, even at full strength, numbered just over 100. Dominic's eyes met mine, and in them I saw something unexpected. Not fear, but certainty. As if he'd been expecting this, it seems, he said quietly. That word of your talents has spread faster than we anticipated, little healer. My talents, I echoed, fear crawling up my spine like ivy. How could anyone know? It was dark. We were alone. Poison like that leaves a magical signature, Dominic said, already pulling his shirt back on with swift, economical movements. Whoever sent the assassins would have felt the moment their poison was neutralized. His eyes held mine, serious and intent. They know someone here has old magic. Omega healing magic. The room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. All my life I'd hidden what I was, what I could do, and in one moment of compassion, I'd exposed myself. Not just to Dominic, but to enemies I didn't even know existed. What do they want with me? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Gabriel cleared his throat. If I may, Alpha. Speak, Dominic commanded, not taking his eyes from me. The timing suggests this isn't just about the Omega, Gabriel said, his tone carefully neutral. The attack last night, the poison. Someone wants you dead, and when that failed, they came prepared with numbers, and they want whatever neutralized their poison. Dominic finished, his jaw tight with anger. Or whoever. The implications crashed down on me. I wasn't just in danger, I had brought danger to my entire pack. 200 wolves against our 100. A slaughter waiting to happen. I should leave, I whispered, backing toward the door. If I go to them... No, Dominic's voice cracked like a whip, freezing me in place. That is exactly what they want, to separate you from pack protection. What protection? I asked bitterly. Half our pack doesn't even know I exist, and the other half wouldn't risk their lives for an Omega. Something dangerous flashed in Dominic's eyes. You underestimate your value, Eleanor, and you underestimate me. He turned to Gabriel. Call the council. All alphas and betas. Now. Gabriel nodded once and left, closing the door behind him. Alone again with Dominic, I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warm air in the study. I never meant for this to happen. He approached me slowly, as one might a wounded animal. Look at me. I raised my eyes reluctantly, expecting accusation. Instead, I found determination. You saved my life, he said quietly. Now let me save yours. At what cost? I asked, the pendant heavy against my chest. How many pack members will die because of me? His hands came to rest on my shoulders, warm and steady. Listen carefully, Eleanor. This isn't about you, not entirely. The poison was meant for me. The attack was aimed at our pack. You were simply the variable they didn't expect. His thumbs traced small circles against my collarbone, a gesture meant to comfort that instead sent shivers down my spine. Whoever is behind this wants power. My power, your power. They would have come regardless. I wanted to believe him, wanted to absolve myself of the guilt already weighing on me. But years of self-preservation made trust difficult. What happens now? I asked. Now, he said, releasing me with what seemed like reluctance. We meet them on our terms, not theirs. The council chamber buzzed with tension when we entered. 12 wolves, the highest-ranking members of our pack, stood around a massive round table carved with the pack's history in spiraling symbols. Their eyes widened at the sight of me entering behind Dominic, an Omega in sacred space. What is she doing here? Snapped Lydia, a fierce female alpha who had never bothered to hide her disdain for those she considered weak. She is here because I command it, Dominic replied, his voice leaving no room for argument. Eleanor Moonfell saved my life last night when I was poisoned during the attack. Murmurs rippled through the room. I kept my eyes down, feeling the weight of their stares. Poisoned. Victor, our oldest council member, leaned forward. What kind? Ancient magic, Dominic said. Bloodroot and wolfsbane, delivered by Blade during the commotion. I would have died within hours if not for her knowledge of the old ways. This revelation sent a new wave of whispers through the chamber. I could feel their reassessment, their calculating gazes as they looked at me with new eyes. And now we have 200 wolves at our borders, Gabriel added, standing at Dominic's right hand. Not attacking, just waiting. As if they're expecting something, or someone. They want her, Lydia said, cutting to the heart of the matter with brutal efficiency. An Omega healer would be valuable to any pack. They want both of us, Dominic corrected. The failed assassination followed by this show of force makes their intentions clear. They want me dead, and her captured. I flinched at the bluntness of his words, but couldn't deny their logic. "Who are they?" asked another council member, a beta named Thomas who rarely spoke. "Multiple packs working together," Gabriel answered, unrolling a map on the table. "Scouts report at least 3 different pack scents among them: Northern Ridge, Stone River, and Shadow Valley." Gasps filled the room. These were ancient enemies of our pack, with grievances stretching back generations. "An alliance," Victor breathed, his lined face grave. "Unprecedented. What do we do?" someone asked. "We're outnumbered 2-1. Dominic's hand came to rest at the small of my back, a subtle gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by the sharp eyes around us. "We negotiate from strength, not weakness." "What strength?" Lydia scoffed. "They have the numbers, the position. They don't have me." Dominic cut her off. "And they don't have her." His eyes met mine briefly, filled with a confidence I couldn't understand. "Eleanor, tell them what you told me about the poison." All eyes turned to me, and I felt my throat constrict with panic. I had never addressed the council, never spoken in such company. My voice faltered. Dominic's hand pressed more firmly against my back, steadying me. I drew a deep breath. The poison was ancient, not just deadly to the body, but to the spirit as well. It would have prevented his wolf from finding the moon path after death. Horror spread across the faces around me. For our kind, being cut off from the moon path, the spiritual journey every wolf took after death, was worse than any physical torment. "Such knowledge has been lost for centuries," Victor said, eyeing me with new respect. "How did you come by it?" My fingers found my grandmother's pendant. "My bloodline. We've been keepers of the old ways, passing knowledge from one generation to the next. My grandmother taught me before she died. Convenient timing," Lydia muttered, though loud enough for all to hear. "She appears with this ancient knowledge just as we're surrounded." Anger flashed through me, hot and unexpected. "I've been with this pack my entire life," I said, meeting her gaze directly. A challenge no Omega would normally dare. "I was born here 24 years ago. I watched my parents die defending these lands when I was 6. I buried my grandmother in our soil when hunters took her from me at 16. I have bled for this pack, even when it never saw me bleed." Silence fell over the chamber. Even Lydia seemed taken aback by my sudden fierceness. "She speaks truth," Victor said finally. "I remember her grandmother, a quiet woman, but respected among the elders for her knowledge of herbs and healing." Dominic's eyes had never left my face during my outburst, and I saw something in them I couldn't name. Approval, perhaps, or pride. "Eleanor stays," he declared, his tone brooking no argument, "and we use their expectations against them. They think we're weak, divided. They think an Omega would be unprotected, unclaimed. We prove them wrong." "How?" Gabriel asked, ever practical. Dominic's next words dropped into the room like stones into still water. "By making her mine." My head snapped up, certain I had misheard. Around the table, faces registered shock, disbelief, calculation. "You can't be serious." Lydia was the first to recover. "An Alpha King with an Omega mate? It's unprecedented. It would make us look weak to other packs." "No," Victor contradicted, stroking his gray beard thoughtfully. "It's not unprecedented. It's forgotten." His wise eyes turned to me with new understanding. "In the oldest stories, the most powerful alphas often chose Omega mates. They balanced each other, strength and healing, rage and compassion. Stories and legends," Lydia dismissed. "We deal in reality. The reality," Dominic said, his voice hardening, "is that I choose her. As my mate, she gains my protection and the respect due to the alphas chosen. More importantly, it sends a message to our enemies that she is not available for taking." My mind reeled. This couldn't be happening. Alphas, especially Alpha Kings, did not mate with Omegas. We were too weak, too submissive, too everything they were not. "Don't I have a choice in this?" I found myself asking. the words escaping before I could stop them. The room went deadly quiet. Challenging an alpha's decision in council was unheard of. Challenging the Alpha King was suicide. But Dominic surprised me yet again. Instead of rage, his face softened as he turned to me. "Of course you do, Eleanor. I would never force a mating bond. But I am asking you, here before the council, to consider it, not just for strategy, but because I believe—" He paused, choosing his words carefully, "that you and I are stronger together than apart." My heart hammered against my ribs. Was this real? Or merely a tactical move to protect the pack? I searched his face for deception and found only sincerity and something else. Something that made my Omega instincts stir with recognition. "This is absurd," Lydia interrupted. "We don't have time for romantic notions. Those wolves will attack by nightfall if we don't respond." "Then we respond," Dominic said, not taking his eyes from mine, with a show of unity and strength. "Eleanor?" I felt the weight of expectation from every direction. My mind raced through possibilities, consequences, fears, but beneath it all was a simple truth. I had saved him once. Perhaps this was how I saved our pack. "I accept," I said quietly, the words changing my fate irrevocably. Relief washed over Dominic's features, so genuine it startled me. Had he truly feared I would refuse? "Then it's decided," he said, turning back to the council. "Prepare the ritual grounds. We complete the mating ceremony at noon. Then I meet with the enemy pack leaders immediately after." "That's barely 2 hours from now," Gabriel pointed out. "Then we work quickly," Dominic replied. "Victor, you'll officiate. Lydia, secure the perimeter with our strongest fighters, but maintain distance from the invaders. No provocation. Thomas, prepare the Great Hall for potential negotiations." As he issued commands, the council members nodded, purpose replacing uncertainty. Even Lydia, though clearly unhappy, accepted her role with grim determination. "Gabriel, escort Eleanor to the preparation chambers," Dominic continued. "Ensure she has everything she needs." As the council dispersed, I stood frozen, the enormity of what I'd agreed to washing over me in waves, mated to the Alpha King, bound for life to a wolf so far above my station that we might as well inhabit different worlds. Gabriel approached, his expression unreadable. "This way," he said, gesturing toward a side door. Before I could follow, Dominic caught my hand, pulling me close enough that only I could hear his words. "This isn't just strategy, Eleanor," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "Last night, when you saved me, something happened between us. Something rare." I swallowed hard, unable to deny the connection I had felt. "It doesn't make sense. You're an Alpha King. I'm—" "Exactly what I need," he finished for me. His fingers brushed my cheek with surprising tenderness. "What this pack needs, strength without compassion, is just tyranny. I've been half a leader until now." Gabriel cleared his throat discreetly, reminding us of his presence. Dominic straightened, releasing me reluctantly. "Go. Prepare. When next we meet, it will be to bind our lives together." As I followed Gabriel through winding corridors to the preparation chambers, my mind whirled with contradictions. Everything I had believed about my place in the world had been upended in less than a day. From invisible to essential, from overlooked to chosen. The preparation chamber was a surprise, warm and elegant, with sunlight streaming through high windows onto ancient stone walls. A large copper tub stood in the center, steam rising from water already drawn. "The Alpha Queen's chambers," Gabriel explained, his tone softer than I'd ever heard it. "Unused for many years now." "I'm not an alpha," I reminded him, running my fingers over the carved wooden dresser. "Won't that create problems?" Gabriel studied me with new consideration. "You stood up to Lydia and council. That took courage few betas possess." A small smile touched his lips. "Perhaps there's more alpha in you than you realize, just expressed differently." He left me then, promising to send female attendants to help me prepare for the ceremony. Alone, I sank onto a velvet-covered bench, my legs suddenly too weak to support me. "What have I done?" I whispered to my grandmother's pendant. "What am I doing?" But as I closed my eyes, I could almost hear her voice, carried on the steam that rose around me. Becoming who you were, always meant to be. Outside the windows, I could sense them waiting, 200 wolves surrounding our territory, hungry for something I possessed, something worth killing for, worth dying for. Old magic. Omega healing. The power to save or destroy. And now, the power to unite. The traditional white dress they brought me was simple, yet beautiful. Flowing fabric that caught the light like water, embroidered with subtle silver threads that formed ancient pack symbols of protection and fertility. As attendants I had never met brushed my pale blonde hair until it shone like moonlight, weaving small white flowers into a crown around my head. I barely recognized my reflection. "You look like the moon herself," whispered one of the younger girls, her eyes wide with wonder. I tried to smile, but fear and anticipation made it tremble at the edges. This was happening too fast. The rational part of me knew this was strategy, politics, survival. But another part, the Omega that had recognized something in Dominic from the first moment I touched his wounds, whispered that this was fate. A soft knock at the door announced Victor's arrival. The old wolf's eyes crinkled with approval as he took in my appearance. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said, offering his arm to escort me. "She always said you were destined for more than the shadows." "You knew her well?" I asked, surprised as I placed my hand on his weathered forearm. Victor nodded, leading me through corridors now lined with pack members who stared openly, whispering behind their hands at the sight of me. Helena and I were friends for many years. She saw things others didn't, the old magic stirring, the imbalances growing between packs. "She never told me," I said softly. "She was protecting you," Victor replied, "until you were ready, until the pack was ready." We emerged into the ceremonial clearing, a perfect circle of ancient stones set in the heart of pack territory. I had seen it many times from a distance, but had never been allowed inside during important rituals. Now I stood at its threshold as the center of attention, hundreds of eyes fixed upon me with expressions ranging from awe to outright hostility. The pack had gathered in concentric circles around the stone ring, with the council members forming the innermost circle, and at the center, waiting beside the ceremonial fire, stood Dominic. He had changed into formal alpha ceremonial attire, dark pants and an open vest that displayed both his powerful physique and, deliberately, the bandages covering his healing wounds, a reminder to all of what had brought us to this moment. His dark hair had been pulled back, emphasizing the sharp angles of his face. He looked powerful, dangerous, and utterly magnificent. Our eyes met across the distance, and the world around me seemed to fade. In that moment, I understood what the old stories meant about mates recognizing each other's souls. Something ancient and primal passed between us. Recognition, acceptance, need. The traditional drums began, their rhythm matching the thundering of my heart as Victor led me forward. Each step brought me closer to a future I had never imagined possible. With each step, I felt my Omega nature responding to Dominic's alpha call like the tide answering the moon. When we reached the center, Victor placed my hand in Dominic's. The Alpha King's fingers closed around mine, warm and strong and reassuring. "Wolves of the Silver Moon Pack," Victor's voice rang out, silencing the murmurs of the crowd. "We gather in ancient tradition to witness the mating of our Alpha King to his chosen one. In times of old, the joining of Alpha and Omega was considered the most sacred of bonds, power balanced by compassion, strength tempered by healing." I could feel the surprise rippling through the assembled pack members. This was not the story they had been taught, not the hierarchy they understood. Yet Victor spoke with the authority of one who had studied the oldest pack histories. "Today, as enemies gather at our borders, we return to the old ways," Victor continued. "The ways that made our ancestors strong, the ways that will ensure our survival." He turned to Dominic first, as tradition dictated. "Dominic Ravenwolf, Alpha King of the Silver Moon Pack, do you choose Eleanor Moonfell as your mate, to protect and cherish, to lead alongside until death and beyond?" Dominic's eyes never left mine as he answered, his voice clear and strong. "I choose her, in this life and the next." Victor turned to me. Eleanor Moonfell, do you choose Dominic Ravenwolf as your mate, to support and strengthen, to heal and guide, until death and beyond? I took a deep breath, aware that my next words would forever alter my fate. I choose him, I said, my voice steadier than I expected, in this life and the next. Victor nodded, satisfaction evident in his weathered features. Then, by the old magic and the new, by the laws of wolf and man, I declare this mating begun. Complete the bond as tradition demands. Dominic stepped closer, his hands rising to cup my face. Are you ready? He asked, his voice pitched low for my ears alone. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. This was it. The moment when pretense could become reality. When strategy could become destiny. His lips met mine with unexpected gentleness, a question rather than a demand. But as I responded, something electric passed between us. The first stirrings of the mating bond, ancient magic awakening in response to our union. The kiss deepened, his arms encircling me as mine wound around his neck, both of us forgetting our audience as the connection between us flared bright and undeniable. When we finally parted, breathless and dazed, the pack had fallen silent in witness to the obvious power of what had just occurred. Even the most skeptical could not deny the visible energy that shimmered in the air around us, the manifestation of a true mating bond forming, rare even between compatible wolves. The final step remains, Victor announced. The marking. Dominic's eyes questioned mine, seeking permission. This was the most intimate part of the ceremony, the claiming bite that would leave his mark upon me forever, binding our wolves and our souls. I tilted my head, offering my neck in the ultimate gesture of Omega submission, but as Dominic lowered his head, he whispered against my skin, "This isn't submission, Eleanor. This is trust." His teeth broke my skin with exquisite precision, pain and pleasure mingling into a sensation that sent waves of energy coursing through my body. The mating bond snapped into place like the final piece of a puzzle, connecting us in ways I had never imagined possible. I could feel his emotions, his strength, his absolute certainty that this was right. When he lifted his head, his eyes had changed to the crimson of his wolf, a drop of my blood staining his lower lip. Without thought, I raised my hand to his face, brushing the blood away with my thumb, in a gesture so intimate, it drew gasps from those closest to us. "It is done," Victor declared, satisfaction evident in his voice. "The Alpha King has taken a mate. Long live the Alpha Queen." The traditional response should have been immediate, the pack howling their acceptance, but confusion and surprise held them in silence for several heartbeats. Then, from the back of the gathering, a single howl rose. One of the youngest pack members, a child too innocent to understand the politics at play, another joined, then another, until the forest rang with the sounds of our pack acknowledging their new reality. As the ceremony concluded, Gabriel approached, his expression grave despite the celebration around us. "They're moving," he said quietly to Dominic. "All 3 Alpha leaders request an audience. They're at the northern border." Dominic's arm tightened around my waist. "Perfect timing," he said, a dangerous smile playing at his lips. "Bring them to the Great Hall. Let them see what awaits them." As we walked back toward the Alpha House, now our shared home, pack members parted before us, many bowing their heads in respect, a gesture I had never received before. The sudden change in status was dizzying. "Are you all right?" Dominic asked, his voice low in my ear, his concern flowing through our new bond. "It's overwhelming," I admitted. "Yesterday I was nothing to them, today they bow." His expression darkened. "You were never nothing, Eleanor, just unseen. That was our failure, not yours." We reached the Great Hall, an impressive space with high ceilings supported by massive timber beams, walls adorned with pack history and tapestries and weapons. Dominic led me to the raised platform where 2 ornate chairs stood side by side, the Alpha thrones. "Sit beside me," he said, guiding me to the right-hand throne. "Let them see us united." As I took my place, feeling small in the massive chair designed for wolves of Alpha stature, council members and high-ranking pack fighters filed in, positioning themselves strategically around the room. A show of strength, carefully orchestrated, Gabriel entered last, followed by 3 wolves whose very presence seemed to fill the hall with tension. The alpha leaders of Northern Ridge, Stone River, and Shadow Valley, ancient enemies now united in common purpose. They stopped at the base of the platform, their eyes taking in the scene before them. Dominic and I seated side by side, the visible mating mark fresh on my neck, our pack arrayed behind us in silent strength. Alpha King Ravenwolf, the central figure, spoke, a massive wolf with silver-streaked black hair and cold eyes. I am Klaus of Northern Ridge. We come seeking what is ours. Dominic's expression remained impassive. And what might that be, Klaus? Besides an excuse to surround my territory with 200 wolves? The second alpha, a leaner wolf with calculating eyes, stepped forward, the Omega healer, the one who neutralized our poison. His gaze fixed on me, assessment and covetousness mingled in his expression. We sensed the old magic at work. That kind of power doesn't belong hidden in a lesser pack. I felt Dominic's fury through our bond, though his face betrayed nothing. You admit to the assassination attempt, then, Darius of Stone River? Bold, even for you. The third alpha, a female with a scar running down one side of her face, laughed. Why deny what we all know? The poison was mine. The blade, Klaus's. The strategy, Darius's. A perfect collaboration that should have ended your reign. Her eyes narrowed as they fixed on me. Until she interfered. Mara of Shadow Valley, Dominic acknowledged her with dangerous courtesy. Always direct. I've always appreciated that about you, even as enemies. We did not come to exchange pleasantries. Klaus cut in. The Omega. Give her to us, and we withdraw our forces. Refuse, and we take her anyway, along with whatever remains of your pack by sunrise. Murmurs of anger rippled through our ranks. Dominic raised a hand, silencing them instantly. You seem to be operating under several misconceptions, he said, his voice deceptively calm. First, that you could take her. Second, that she is merely an Omega. His hand found mine, fingers interlacing in a public display of unity. Allow me to introduce Eleanor Ravenwolf, my mate and alpha queen of Silvermoon Pack. The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. Mara recovered first, her scarred face twisting with disbelief. Impossible, she spat. An alpha king does not mate with an Omega. It's against the natural order. Is it? Victor stepped forward from the council, his age and wisdom commanding respect even from our enemies. Or is it the natural order you've forgotten, blinded by generations of false pride? He moved to stand before the 3 alphas, fearless despite their greater strength. In the beginning, the strongest alphas sought Omega mates for the balance they provided. It was only in recent centuries that we lost this wisdom, equating physical might with worthiness. Pretty stories for children, Darius dismissed. The reality is that we have you outnumbered 2-1. Mating ceremony or not, we can still take what we came for. Can you? Dominic asked, rising from his throne. Through our bond, I felt not fear, but absolute confidence. You felt the old magic when Eleanor healed me. What you failed to understand is that it was just a fraction of what we, are capable of together. I rose beside him, uncertain what he meant, but trusting him implicitly now that our souls were linked. He turned to me, his eyes asking a silent question. I nodded, giving permission for whatever he planned. Show them, he said softly. Instinctively, I knew what he meant. The most closely guarded secret of my bloodline, the ability that had made me hide for so long. With Dominic's strength flowing through our bond, supporting me, I closed my eyes and called to my wolf. The transformation that had always been painful and incomplete now flowed like water. I felt my body shift, bones realigning, muscles stretching, but instead of the small, vulnerable form I had always taken, something new emerged. Something powerful. When I opened my eyes, I stood on 4 paws, my wolf form fully manifested for the first time in my life. But this wasn't the stunted form I had known. Through the shocked gasps around me and the pride flowing from Dominic through our bond, I knew I had achieved what my grandmother had always promised was possible. White fur like freshly fallen snow covered my now massive form. An Omega wolf in size and traditional markings, yes, but radiating power, that no one could dismiss as weakness. The balance to Dominic's dark strength, the light to his shadow. The white wolf, Klaus breathed, taking an involuntary step backward. The legends. Mara's face had drained of color. It can't be. Dominic shifted beside me, his black wolf form even more impressive than his human one. Together we stood before our enemies, dark and light, strength and healing, perfect complements in the oldest tradition. Victor's voice rang out, the prophecy fulfilled. When dark and light unite, the three shall fall and harmony return. It is written in the oldest texts, passed down through generations of elders. Through our bond, I could feel Dominic's plan, not to fight, but to demonstrate such overwhelming spiritual power that fighting would become unthinkable. Ancient magic recognized ancient magic. The three enemy alphas could feel it now, the rightness of our union, the power it created that exceeded mere numbers. Klaus was the first to lower his gaze, a gesture of submission I never expected to see from an alpha of his stature. We misunderstood the situation, clearly, Gabriel said dryly from his position beside the thrones. Dominic shifted back to human form, and I followed his lead. The transformation as smooth as silk, now that our bond had strengthened my abilities. You have a choice, Dominic told the three alphas, his voice carrying the authority of generations. Leave our territories peacefully, never to return with hostile intent, or face the consequences of challenging a prophecy fulfilled. Darius looked like he might argue, but Mara placed a restraining hand on his arm. We withdraw, she said, her voice tight with suppressed rage. But this isn't over, Ravenwolf. Actually, Victor interjected, according to the prophecy, it is. The three shall fall. Your power over your own packs will diminish from this day forward. The old magics have been reawakened. Balance will return to all packs, not just ours. As if to confirm his words, howls began to sound from outside. Not the battle cries we had expected, but sounds of confusion and dissent. The armies the three alphas had brought were already feeling the effects of the prophecy, their blind loyalty to tyrannical leaders beginning to fracture in the face of true balance. Go, Dominic said, not without compassion. Salvage what you can. Learn to lead with both strength and wisdom, or step aside for those who can. As Gabriel escorted the three stunned alphas from our hall, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Prophecy, ancient magic, the white wolf of legend, me, Eleanor Moonfell, now Eleanor Ravenwolf. The Omega who had spent her life hiding had just helped save her pack without a single drop of blood spilled. Dominic turned to me, heedless of the watching eyes of our pack, and drew me into his arms. Through our bond, I could feel his wonder, his pride, his love. Yes, that was definitely love. New and fragile, but growing stronger with each passing moment. You continue to surprise me, little healer, he murmured against my hair. I surprised myself, I admitted, still trying to process the perfect shift, the white wolf that had emerged from my broken Omega form. Victor approached, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Your grandmother saw this day coming, he said. Before she died, she made me promise to watch over you, to guide you when the time came. She carries the future of all wolves in her blood, she told me. Dominic's arm tightened around my waist. She was right. As word spread that the enemy forces were dispersing, confusion giving way to something like revolution among their ranks, our pack gathered in the great hall. Faces that had always looked through me now regarded me with respect, even awe. It was disorienting after a lifetime of invisibility. Lydia approached, her proud face showing the struggle between lifelong beliefs and what she had just witnessed. Alpha Queen, she acknowledged, the title clearly difficult for her to say. It seems I misjudged you. We all did, Dominic said, but his tone held no accusation. Myself included, but that changes today. He addressed the entire gathering, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. For too long, we've measured worth by physical strength alone. We've dismissed the quiet powers of healing, compassion, and wisdom. Today, we witnessed what happens when true balance is restored. Murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd. I could feel the shift in energy. Not just acceptance of me as their alpha queen, but a deeper questioning of the hierarchies that had defined pack life for generations. "The world is changing," Victor added, standing beside us now. "Other packs will feel it too, this reawakening of the old magic. Some will resist, some will embrace it, but none can stop what has begun here today." As the gathering evolved into something like a celebration, the relief of averted war blossoming into genuine joy, Dominic led me quietly away from the crowds, through corridors I had never seen, up to a tower room with windows that overlooked our entire territory. "I needed a moment alone with my mate," he explained, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw with gentle wonder. "Before you belong to the pack again." "This is real, isn't it?" I asked, still half expecting to wake from an impossible dream. Not just strategy or prophecy, but us? His smile transformed his face, softening the hard edges of the Alpha King into something infinitely more approachable. "The moment you touched my wounds last night, I felt something I've never experienced before. Like recognizing a part of myself I didn't know was missing." His forehead rested against mine, our breath mingling. The strategy gave me an excuse to claim what I already knew was mine. The prophecy merely confirmed what my heart had already decided. Through our bond, I could feel the absolute truth of his words. This powerful wolf, this Alpha King who could have chosen anyone, had recognized something in me worth cherishing, worth elevating, worth loving. "I've spent my whole life hiding," I confessed, my hands resting against his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady beneath my palms. Being invisible felt safer than being vulnerable. "And now?" he asked, his hands spanning my waist, holding me as if I were precious. I smiled, feeling truly seen for the first time in my life. "Now I'm ready to step into the light. Our light." As his lips met mine, sealing a promise more binding than even the mating ceremony, I felt my grandmother's pendant warm against my skin. Approval from beyond, blessing what had begun in a moment of compassion and would continue in a lifetime of balance restored. Outside our windows, the world was already changing. 200 wolves who had come for war were returning to their territories, with questions instead of conquest. Old magic stirred in the earth beneath our feet, in the air we breathed, in the bond that connected us. The weak Omega who had healed the Alpha King's wounds had found her own healing in the process. Not by becoming strong as the world defined strength, but by embracing the power that had always been hers, the power to bring balance, to heal wounds both seen and unseen, to love without fear. And in doing so, I had healed not just a wolf, but an entire pack. Perhaps in time,